Ever get that feeling? Like you're really trying to focus on something big, maybe a presentation you got to nail, or finally getting to that book everyone's raving about.
Yeah.
Or even just actually being present with your family. And then, bam, something yanks your attention away, like a phone buzzing or a random thought. That sudden urge to check, well, anything really. It's a universal struggle, right? That constant battle for our focus. And that, my friend, is exactly what we're diving dope into today.
And it's something that I'm sure you can relate to, especially if you're someone who's all about learning new stuff, really getting a grip on things, but also not wanting to drown in an ocean of information. So today, we're cutting through the noise about distraction itself.
Exactly. We're getting into the nitty-gritty of how to become indistractable. Our main guide for this journey, Nir Eyal's book, Indistractable, How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. The title might sound a bit, well, intense, like we're going to be all about productivity hacks, you know. But there's more to it. We're going deeper than just surface-level tips.
Way deeper. This is about understanding why we get distracted in the first place, and more importantly, how to take back control.
And to give you an idea, this book is not just another self-help fad. Big thinkers like Jonathan Haidt, the Righteous Mind guy, and even Mark Manson, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck, are fans. That says something, right?
Yeah, this is the real deal, not just fluff.
And the author, Nir Eyal. His background makes this even more interesting. This guy spent years in the tech world researching what makes products addictive. We're talking Facebook, Google, PayPal, Slack, the heavy hitters. So he really knows how these platforms grab and hold our attention. Kind of ironic, though. He also wrote Hooked, a book about building those habit-forming products.
Yeah.
Then he realized he was struggling with distraction himself, which makes this whole thing so relatable. Like imagine a chef obsessed with healthy eating who secretly craves a burger.
We've all been there. But that insider knowledge, that's what makes Eyal's perspective so valuable. He gets the mechanics behind it all, which means he can offer real solutions, not just willpower and wishful thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, we love getting practical. So for you, our listener, who's all about clear insights and engaging content, we're going to focus on the science-backed strategies from the book. We're not just going to tell you to meditate more or to be mindful.
Which, can be helpful for some.
For sure. But we're going deeper. We're dissecting the nuts and bolts of becoming indistractable in a way that hopefully you'll find engaging. No boring textbook stuff here. Really get started.
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, let's unpack this. Eyal starts with a pretty powerful idea, distraction. It often starts within us. It's not always something external that's pulling us away. Sometimes it's an internal urge, that feeling of being pulled off track.
Makes you think, right?
Yeah, it's more than just annoying notifications. And to illustrate this, the book tells this really fascinating story about Zoe Chance. She's a Yale professor, teaches a class on persuasion, no less. But she found herself kind of obsessed with this Strive pedometer, which, on the surface seems like a good thing, encouraging people to move more.
Totally. Seems healthy.
Right. But her experience shows how even well-intentioned tools can become huge distractions.
Yeah.
She and her colleagues, being behavioral science experts, they even acknowledged the persuasive design of the device. They saw how cleverly it used motivational techniques. So naturally, she tried it out.
Makes sense.
But it quickly took over. She admitted she just couldn't stop. It took her a while to realize it was a problem. She wasn't just passively tracking steps. It became this all-consuming thing. She was making spreadsheets, not for exercise plans, but for optimizing virtual transactions within the pedometer's system, like earning points and stuff.
Wow.
It got pretty intense. She was hitting 24,000 steps a day, regularly. And there's this one part, it's almost midnight. The Strive app sends a pop-up challenge. Triple points for climbing 20 stairs. She gets out of bed while brushing her teeth, getting ready for bed to do it. Then another challenge. 40 more steps.
You gotta be kidding.
But it shows how these external prompts can hijack our thinking, right? Especially when there's a reward involved, even if it's virtual.
Absolutely. And the point here isn't just that fitness trackers can be addictive. It's about understanding the root cause of our distractions. So that notification on your phone, that's the immediate trigger. But what's the real discomfort you're trying to avoid by checking it?
Exactly. Like, why do we reach for our phones when we're bored? Why do we scroll social media when we feel lonely?
We're trying to escape those feelings, even if it's just for a moment.
And once we see that, we can start managing those urges better. The book talks about this technique called the 10-minute rule. It's simple. When you feel that urge to give in to a distraction, you tell yourself to wait 10 minutes. Whether it's checking your phone, Googling something random, grabbing a snack, or hitting next episode on Netflix.
That little pause can work wonders. It puts you back in control.
It's not about completely denying yourself, which can backfire. It's about giving yourself space to reconsider.
Exactly.
And to really tackle those internal triggers. The book gives us a 4-step process. First, figure out the emotion that comes before, the urge to distract yourself. Like, what are you feeling right before you reach for your phone or click a new tab?
Then write it down, this internal trigger. Putting it on paper makes it real, not just some fleeting feeling.
And this is key number 3. Approach that negative feeling with curiosity, not judgment. Don't get mad at yourself for feeling restless or bored. Try to understand it.
And be extra cautious during those in-between moments, like when you finish a task but haven't started a new one. Those are prime times for distraction.
Good point. Now, the book also explores this cool idea of reframing the task itself. It talks about the work of Ian Bogost, who studies fun. And get this, he says fun can happen even without much enjoyment. It's kind of a mind bender, right?
Yeah, what's that about?
He's basically saying that sometimes the act of engaging, the focus, the challenge itself can be a form of fun, even if it's not pure enjoyment in every moment.
Okay, I see. Like that feeling of satisfaction when you finally solve a tough problem or master a new skill.
Right. It might not be all sunshine and rainbows, but there's a deeper sense of engagement there. That can be its own reward. And this can change how we approach tasks that might seem less appealing at first.
Instead of focusing on how much we dislike it, we focus on the process, the challenge.
Right. And then there's the whole idea of reframing how we think about willpower. For a long time, the idea was that willpower is like a muscle. It gets tired, you run out. Ego depletion, they called it.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Early studies seem to support that. But newer research is challenging it. The book talks about Carol Dweck's work. She found that people who believed willpower was limited were the ones showing signs of ego depletion.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Even that famous lemonade study where they thought sugar boosted willpower. It was more about the belief in the sugar's effect, not the sugar itself.
Wow. So our beliefs about our self-control really affect our ability to control ourselves.
It seems that way. And then Michael Insleck suggests that willpower is more like an emotion. It ebbs and flows, like we don't run out of joy or anger.
That's a good point.
So maybe motivation is similar. It's not a fixed amount that we use up.
Which means it can be managed, right?
Exactly. This connects with how we see our temperament. The book mentions this craving beliefs questionnaire, used to assess how much control people feel they have over cravings. They found that those who felt more in control were more successful in overcoming addictions, and those who felt powerless, they were more likely to relapse.
So our mindset really matters.
It's huge. And a practical tip that comes from this, talk to yourself with kindness, the way you talk to a friend struggling with the same thing. We're often way harder on ourselves than we would be on anyone else.
That's so true.
So in this first part, it's all about mastering those internal triggers, reflecting on the discomfort behind them, finding the engaging parts of tasks, and ditching those self-limiting beliefs about willpower. Becoming indistractable starts from within.
And that leads us perfectly to part 2, which is all about planning our time. Eyal has this great line, "You can't call something a distraction unless you know what it's distracting you from."
It sounds so simple, but it's so true. Without knowing what you want to do with your time, anything else seems reasonable, or at least not a complete waste. But being indistractable requires intention.
This is where traction comes in. The things that move us towards our goals, things align with our values, distractions pull us away from those. So step 1, figure out what your traction activities actually are.
And your calendar should reflect those values, right? If something's truly important to you, whether it's your health, relationships, or your career, are you actually making time for it in your schedule?
We often get caught up in reacting to other people's priorities, and those things that matter most, they get pushed aside.
So how do we make time for traction? Time boxing. This is more than a to-do list. It's about blocking out specific time for specific activities, like setting an implementation intention, as the book calls it.
Which basically means deciding what you'll do and when you'll do it.
Eyal suggests time boxing for 3 main areas: you, relationships, and work. So personal time for things like exercise, learning, resting, then dedicated time for family and friends, and of course, time for your job.
It's not enough to do this just once, though. You got to regularly check your schedule and refine it, make sure it's still serving you. And once it's set, stick to it as much as possible.
This whole idea of focusing on the input, not just the outcome, is powerful. The book shares Eyal's experience with insomnia. He was so worried about not sleeping that it kept him awake.
Oh, that vicious cycle.
He realized that stressing about sleep was distracting him from actually resting. So he shifted his focus. Instead of obsessing over falling asleep, the output, he focused on creating the right conditions for rest, the input. Gave himself time, a calm environment.
Makes sense.
And the insomnia lessened.
Amazing. So the lesson. Don't get hung up on outcomes you can't control. Focus on putting in the time for the things that truly matter.
Now, let's talk relationships. Family and close friends shouldn't be treated like leftovers. They deserve dedicated time, not just whatever's left after everything else.
It's like that saying, right? Leftovers are for quitters.
Ah, well, in the book, Eyal uses this analogy of a bankrupt business. Residual beneficiaries get whatever's left after everyone else is paid. Sadly, that often reflects how we treat loved ones. They get scraps of our time.
And scraps aren't enough to nurture those connections.
To combat this, Eyal schedules time with his daughter every week, like it's a work meeting. They even have a fun jar with activity ideas.
That's adorable.
And he does the same for his wife, Julie. Regular date nights. Doesn't have to be fancy. Just dedicated time to connect.
Quality time.
The book also addresses chores, how they're often unfairly divided. It mentions Darcy Lockman's research, how women still do most of the housework and childcare, even in dual-income families.
Sadly true.
Eyal admits he wasn't doing his fair share either, until they started time-boxing chores. They made a list, assigned slots in their week, more balanced, less resentment. That's a good system.
And then friendships. This line from the book really hit me. This is how friendships die. They starve to death. Life gets busy, things come up, and without effort, those connections fade.
That's true.
And we know how important strong social connections are for our well-being, mental and physical. So, schedule time for friends. Eyal has this bi-weekly thing with friends. They call it the kibbutz. Simple picnic lunch, deep discussion around one question keeps those bonds strong.
I like that.
Now, work, we all dedicate time to our jobs right now. But the key is making sure that time aligns with our values, especially since we spend so much of our lives working.
Absolutely.
The book mentions some scary stats, like how many people check work emails after hours and take work devices on vacation. Always connected and never truly off. Recipe for burnout.
That's no way to live.
And there's this story about a woman named April. She decided to try a more structured workday with planned out time for everything. So she sat down with her manager, David, to discuss it. He was super supportive.
It turns out, by being transparent about her priorities, she made it easier for him to know when to reach her. She also realized some tasks weren't as urgent for him as she thought. Everyone wins.
Win-win.
So whether it's personal life, relationships, or work, the principle is the same. Planning and time boxing are crucial to becoming indistractable. We decide how to spend our time, align it with the people who matter, and push back against the constant flood of distractions.
Which brings us to part 3, hacking back external triggers. We've covered internal stuff and planning, but let's be real. The world's constantly trying to grab our attention.
Totally. There's this relatable example in the book. Wendy, a marketing consultant, sits down to work on client proposals. Important stuff. But before she even gets started, she's bombarded by notifications. A random tweet, a text from her mom, a LinkedIn recruiter message.
I feel seen.
It's the reality for so many of us, right?
Yeah.
The book then gets into B.J. Fogg's work at Stanford, his persuasive technology lab. He studied how to make tech engaging, even addictive. And his research has influenced how apps like Instagram are designed.
So it's not an accident that we can't put our phones down.
It's designed that way. And these distractions aren't just annoying. They can have serious consequences. The book talks about a study with nurses and medication errors. Nurses who wore vests saying, "do not interrupt," had way fewer errors, like a 47% reduction.
Seriously?
And in a larger study, it was an 88% drop. Shows the impact of interruptions, especially in high-stakes environments.
Okay.
They compared it to the sterile cockpit rule in aviation. No non-essential activities during takeoff or landing. The idea is to create similar distraction-free zones in our own lives.
Makes sense?
So how do we do that? One simple way is a screen sign. A card on your monitor that says, "I need to focus right now, but please come back soon." Sends a clear message to colleagues or family.
Love it.
Al's wife, Julie, she wears a concentration crown when working from home. It lights up. Hard to miss that signal.
Pretty creative.
The point is to have a clear sign that you're not to be disturbed. Now, email. Another big source of distraction. The average office worker gets 100 emails a day. That's over 3 hours spent on email.
Oh, wait.
And that doesn't include the time to refocus after checking email. It takes an average of 64 seconds to reorient. Multiply that by how many times we check email.
It adds up quickly.
And a study suggests that 50% of work emails are unproductive. But we keep checking because of that variable reward. Maybe the next one will be important.
So how do we manage email better?
The book suggests setting office hours for email, like dedicated times to process and respond. Eyal does this himself. Avoid constantly checking your inbox. Batch process instead.
Less tempting that way.
And the play tag method. Touch each email only twice. First time, decide when a response is needed, today or this week. Helps prioritize and prevents rereading.
Guard.
And a word of caution. Don't reply to emails on your phone right away. Those quick replies add up.
Guilty as charged.
Now, group chat. This can be a nightmare. Jason Frade from Basecamp calls it an all-day meeting with random people and no agenda. While it has its uses, it can easily become a distraction black hole.
I hear that.
Frade suggests using it sparingly, only when real-time communication is truly needed. Set clear expectations with colleagues. Use Do Not Disturb when you need to focus.
Good advice.
And be picky about who's in those group chats. Smaller, focus groups work better. Don't sacrifice focused work time for the sake of instant communication.
Now, meetings. They can be such time wasters. The book says only have a meeting if there's a clear agenda beforehand and a written brief proposing a solution.
Meetings should be for decisions, not for figuring out the problem from scratch.
Makes sense.
And another pet peeve. People on their devices during meetings. It's distracting and disrespectful. Creates paranoia.
Like, are they even listening?
So the book advocates for device-free meetings. One laptop for presentations and notes is fine. But that's it. It promotes presence and better outcomes.
Less temptation to zone out.
Now, let's talk about taming the smartphone beast. The book has this 4-step plan. It can be done in under an hour. First, remove unnecessary apps, ones that don't align with your values or add value to your life, like news apps and games.
The time sucks.
Exactly. Then replace. Move your usage of distracting apps like social media and YouTube to your desktop. Schedule specific times to use them. Consider a wristwatch so you're not constantly checking your phone for the time.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Step 3, rearrange. Move tempting apps off your home screen. Make them less accessible. Use the search function to find them when you actually need them.
Out of sight, out of mind.
And finally, reclaim your notifications. Go through each app. Be ruthless. Silence the unimportant ones. Use Do Not Disturb liberally, including the while driving mode. And remember to do this for every new app you install.
Sounds like a notification detox.
Moving on to desktop distractions. The book tells the story of Robert Van Els. His desktop was a mess, icons everywhere. After he decluttered it, his focus improved drastically. There's research from Princeton showing that visual clutter hurts our cognitive performance. And this ties in with attention residue, the idea that switching between tasks leaves mental clutter, making it harder to focus on the next thing.
Our brains need a break.
Van Els went minimalist, just a quote as his background image. The advice: removes unnecessary icons. Use the search function to find files.
Much cleaner.
And, speaking of clutter, too many browser tabs. Distracting, plus they can crash your computer. Eyal has this rule. Never read articles in my web browser.
Interesting.
He saves them to a reading list app, like Pocket. Reads them later on his Kindle during dedicated reading time. Avoids getting sucked into endless clicking.
I see.
Now, the book also talks about multi-channel multitasking. Sometimes engaging multiple senses can actually be helpful, like cooking with friends, walking meetings, listening to audiobooks while commuting or doing chores.
Makes those mundane tasks more bearable.
Eyal calls his reading list an internet containment zone. Keeps interesting stuff there until he has time to focus on it. Prevents aimless browsing.
Makes sense.
And social media feeds. Platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, they're designed to keep us scrolling endlessly. The book recommends tools like Newsfeed Eradicator for Facebook or TotoBook to eliminate or change that feed.
So you're not just mindlessly scrolling.
Right. Be intentional. Go directly to the pages or groups you want to see. Use direct URLs on LinkedIn to bypass the feed. There are even browser extensions that remove distracting stuff on YouTube, like thumbnails and autoplay. The goal: take back control. Don't let the platforms control you.
Take back your time.
And with that, we reach part 4. Making pacts. These are pre-commitments, tools to solidify our intention to be indistractable.
But as the book stresses, these packs work best after you've addressed internal triggers, made time for traction, and tackled external distractions. It's like the final layer of defense.
The book outlines 3 types of pacts. First, effort pacts. These make unwanted behaviors harder, like using tech to limit your access to tech. Apps like Self-Control or Freedom can block distracting websites. You can even physically separate yourself from your devices.
So cold turkey.
Next, price packs. This is where you put money on the line. Stick to your goal, you keep it. Get distracted, you lose it. The book mentions a study on smokers. Those who could earn $800 for quitting had a much higher success rate.
Wow, money talks.
But price packs aren't for everyone or every situation. They work best for short tasks with escapable distractions. Not so much for unavoidable interruptions or longer-term goals. And they can be intimidating. So self-compassion is key before trying this.
Don't beat yourself up.
And the third type is identity packs, changing how you see yourself to change your behavior. The book mentions a study where using the noun voter was more effective in increasing voter turnout than the verb to vote.
So instead of saying it's important to vote, you say it's important to be a voter.
Right. Our self-image is powerful. It guides our actions. So tell others about your new identity. This reinforces it. There's even research showing that teaching others about a behavior can motivate the teacher to adopt it themselves. And rituals, like in religions, can also help solidify identity. Now, Part 5 focuses on creating an indistractable workplace. And the book makes a bold claim: tech overuse at work. Often a symptom of a bad company culture.
So it's not just about individuals being distracted.
Right. It mentions Leslie Perlow's research at BCG. The always-on culture was a big problem, leading to high turnover. She suggested a predictable night off each week. One team tried it, and guess what? Just talking openly about their concerns created psychological safety, and the benefits went beyond just disconnecting from work.
So open communication is key.
Absolutely. The book also links high expectations and low control at work to depression symptoms, which ironically can lead to more distraction as a coping mechanism.
Trying to escape that feeling.
And then there's the cycle of responsiveness, the pressure to always be available, always reply instantly. It fuels tech overuse.
The never-ending notification cycle.
But there are companies doing things differently, like Slack. They discourage after-hours messages. Leadership encourages focused work time. They even have a do not disturb that turns on automatically after work.
It's smart.
Psychological safety, open discussions, leaders who model focused work. That's what makes a workplace indistractable.
Leading by example.
Now, Part 6, raising indistractable kids.
A hot topic, right? The book acknowledges the fears about smartphones and kids, but it stresses the need to understand the root causes of behavior, not just blame technology.
We've all seen those headlines. Smartphones are ruining our kids.
And ironically, those headlines often go viral online.
Exactly.
The book debunks the sugar high myth, no scientific evidence for that. It points out that these techno-panics aren't new. People freaked out about the printing press, education, the radio. It's a pattern.
We always fear the new thing.
The book takes a more balanced view. It mentions Sarah Rose Kavanaugh's work, pushing back against the alarmist stuff, and Andrew Przybilski's research, which suggests a Goldilocks effect with screen time. Too much or too little is bad, but moderate use is fine.
It's about balance. Parents don't have to demonize tech. Teaching kids to manage distraction is a valuable skill. The book then talks about self-determination theory. This theory says kids need 3 things to thrive: autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Sounds about right.
A lack of any of those can lead to seeking fulfillment through distractions. So, autonomy. There's this study comparing American and Mayan children. Mayan kids have more freedom, and they seem to focus better. The book quotes an anthropologist saying, Mayan parents support their kids' goals, not just impose their own.
Make you think about parenting styles.
Then competence. Kids need to feel capable. And relatedness, strong social connections.
The building blocks of a healthy life.
The book mentions Jean Twenge's observations about the decline of unsupervised play and the impact that might be having.
Kids need time to just be kids.
It also quotes Katie Hurley, a child development expert. She says, focus on the effect of the child's behavior, not just the device. Don't just blame the phone.
Understand the why behind it.
Involve kids in finding solutions. Encourage them to ask themselves, is what I'm doing working for me?
Self-reflection is key.
And teach them to make time for traction. Have conversations about values. Help them create schedules that include time for their health, well-being, and their work, which, for kids, is school. Eyal's daughter started scheduling rest time after they talked about its importance.
That's cute.
Have open conversations about schoolwork. Listen without judgment. Understand their values and the consequences of their choices.
It's about guidance, not control.
With teenagers, sometimes it's better to let them face natural consequences, like if they don't study and fail a test. instead of constantly nagging.
They learn from experience.
A good idea is to ask kids how much time they want to spend on different activities. Then honor that as much as possible. It teaches them time management and gives them autonomy.
Makes them feel heard.
And bring back unstructured playtime. Schedule it in. Connect with other parents to make it happen. Studies show it's super important for focus and social skills.
Let them explore, get creative.
Family time is also crucial. Device-free dinners, game nights, whatever works, involve kids in planning it.
Make it a shared experience.
And the elephant in the room, smartphones for teens. The book says parents often cave in to demands without considering if the kid's really ready.
Oh, that's a tough one.
They use this analogy of learning to swim. You start in the shallow end with supervision. Same with digital devices. Gradual introduction, clear boundaries.
Makes sense.
Parents need to model good behavior too. And respect kids' focus time. Don't interrupt them when they're supposed to be studying or working on something.
Practice what you preach.
And teach them about making their own packs. Eyal talked about his experience with his 5-year-old and iPad time. Explain the trade-offs. Too much screen time means less time for other fun stuff.
It's all about choices.
Self-monitoring is key. And remember, conversations about tech can be tough. Disagreements are normal. Just keep it respectful.
It's a learning process for everyone.
And finally, the book talks about social antibodies, ways to counter bad tech habits, like phubbing, ignoring people to be on your phone. One example, if someone's glued to their phone at dinner, just ask, "Is everything okay?" A gentle way to address it.
Calling them out politely.
Eyal and his wife put their kids' stuff in another room during adult conversations to minimize interruptions. And they also talk about how tech can affect romantic relationships. Techno-infidelity, they call it. A study even found that people would rather give up sex than their phones.
That's pretty telling.
They were honest about their own struggles with evening tech use and how it hurt their relationship.
We've all been there.
So they moved phones out of the bedroom, used timer outlets for the internet and monitors, effort packs to create boundaries. They focused on coping with stress, scheduling bedtime, removing those triggers, and using their reclaimed time well.
Sounds like a solid plan.
And if you want more tips on specific things like group chat, meetings, phone use, and desktop distractions, check out chapter 16 through 19.
Lots of good stuff in there.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway from Indistractable is this. It's not about finding the perfect productivity hack or becoming a tech-hating hermit.
No way.
It's about understanding what drives our distraction, both internally and externally, and then taking action to regain control.
Exactly.
And for you, our listener, who values learning efficiently and effectively without getting overwhelmed, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and practical strategies.
We covered a lot today.
Now, here's something to think about. What's one area in your life where distraction consistently messes with your goals or values? And what's one small change based on what we discussed that you could make?
It could be something simple, but meaningful.
Becoming indistractable is a journey, not a destination. But with awareness and effort, a more focused, fulfilling life is definitely within reach.
Absolutely. We have the power to choose.
So go out there and reclaim your attention. It's time well spent.
You got this.